I don't want to be strong like man who look pretty. I want to be strong like bitch that fight bears in the forest.
Welcome to another episode of Bitch vs. Bear with your host, Amber.
Me.
And me, Sydney. Woohoo!
Oh.
I tried a new woohoo.
I see that.
Co-owners of Shield Maiden Trading Co. This is a show where we bitch, laugh, and chat about all things fitness and wellness related to women in the LGBTQIA+ community.
Sure is.
Sure is. All right. Fun episode. Maybe not fun. I don't know. It's a unique episode. I thought it was kind of a cool topic. So,
what do we got?
We're talking about fear.
Ooh.
Yeah. And the reason that I thought that this would be a fun topic is because I think, especially if you've taken time away from like your fitness routine, sometimes we don't recognize that fear may be getting in our way or holding us back, really. And so like, or maybe just from like life-changing decisions, like fear is this thing that gets sometimes like warped, I think, and like exaggerated. And especially like fear is a natural like response, which we're going to go into. And we sometimes get a little too attached to our comfort zones.
What?
And that can be dangerous for growth and just like us as humans. Like it keeps us safe, but it can also be a dangerous kind of stay inside your box and stay inside your lane thing.
That's fair, yeah.
And I think it really can prevent us from kind of moving forward. It's holding us back from, you know, some of those personal, professional, and like big emotional growth things that we need. And so I was like, okay, let's explore why this might be and why we sometimes are like, just let the fear take hold.
Okay, yeah. So fear is a normal response, like we said, to things that might harm us. It's healthy. Fear, though, can also hold us back from doing or trying things that we actually want to do. How can fear help us? How does it hurt us? And what can we do to harness it?
I think that's the key, is learning to harness it. Because like you said, it's a normal response to things.
Yeah. Like having a healthy fear of things is not a bad thing. It's when it's holding you back that it becomes a bad thing. It's important to understand that fear is the response to a perceived threat, while anxiety involves worrying about a threat that has not yet or may never happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to note that fear and anxiety often occur together, but the terms are not interchangeable. So I think we do in our minds do that and skew it and be like, we let what a normal fear is a normal biological response to immediate danger. And many of us have experienced fear, and then anxiety is an emotion. And so people kind of cross those wires. So at some point they've experienced fear, which is natural. And you're like, okay, it's
right.
Yeah. And then anxiety, you start getting in your head, having that emotion about something that it's not actually a threat. Yeah. But you amp yourself up to believe that it is.
Fair. Yeah.
So anxious and frightening emotions can be the same and are definitely easily confused. But when comparing fear versus anxiety, there are important differences between the two of them. So we're going to explain a little bit about that so people have an understanding of like, oh, well, I have anxiety, so that's what's preventing. No, we're not talking about anxiety in this episode. We're talking about fear.
Yeah.
And it's a different thing.
Okay. So fear is a survival response, and it can trigger strong physical reactions in our bodies. As soon as our brain recognizes fear, our amygdala starts to go to work. Poor little guy. It alerts our nervous system, which starts our body's fear response. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline are released, our blood pressure and heart rate increase, and we start breathing faster. We've probably all felt this. I feel this every time I get on the wall to climb.
Yeah, like it is our body's natural state to when we're perceiving something that is dangerous or is life-threatening, right? So like
Yes.
it is interesting that you bring that up of like we've all felt this even in environments where our life isn't actually threatened, it's the perceived. Like we've created an environment where it looks like that or it feels like that. We used to do this on Outward Bound a lot.
Well, yes. Fair.
Yeah.
So even, and this was really cool, I thought, even our blood flow changes. Blood actually flows away from our hearts and into our limbs, making it easier to start throwing punches or run for our lives. Our bodies are preparing for fight or flight at this point. I mean, I guess not like right now, unless you're climbing while you're listening to this. But as some parts of our brain are revving up, other parts are shutting down, which seems like a bad choice. When our amygdala senses fear, our cerebral cortex, that gray area of the brain that harnesses reasoning and judgment, becomes impaired. Not great. Making it difficult to make good decisions or think clearly.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
Unfortunate.
This is where we're going to talk about things like climbing or situations like Outward Bound, where we have put in some of those perceived barriers and we're like, oh yeah, this feels life-threatening. Because now knowing like what your body is going through, it's important to understand like it's good to work through that moment so that you can start to train yourself to think clearly. Because our brain doesn't want to.
Goddamn brain.
Yeah, the brain, it wants to shut down. It wants to be like, I'm just going to let other things take over. And that's when
we're gonna let the amygdala take the reins for a while.
Yeah, we're going to just like all the blood's going to go to your limbs and just like flail about.
It'll be fine.
It'll be totally fine.
Nothing could go wrong.
And so one of the things that I really like about this is like the clearest explanation is like when we're climbing, we've started lead climbing. So it feels very dangerous.
Yes.
It's not any more dangerous than bouldering where you're not attached to a rope at all.
So silly.
But it's that perceived. And like, you know, for example, today Shelby led her out and it was mock leading. She wasn't even on just a lead rope. And I was like, oh, she came down and was like, oh, how'd that feel? And she was like, unnaturally dangerous. Like, just like, why am I doing this again?
So silly.
It's so silly. And it's interesting in the people who like, I feel like because I've been in situations that are actually life-threatening, my fear response is a little different. Like
It's like the spicy tortillas last night at dinner.
Yeah, it's like the spicy tortillas last night at dinner. Like where I don't sense it in the same way because I've had a lot of experience with it where I feel like there's a lot of people, we've created a really safe world in a lot of ways. And while that is great, I think we limit ourselves and we don't push ourselves to experience fear a ton.
Okay.
And fear is a good teacher. And so like when you are just living safely and comfortably in your tiny little box, when you start to push up against things that have you feel these emotions like anxiety and things like that, it can be demoralizing and really harmful to all of your body, psyche, and everything. And so I think at the heart of this episode, it's like, go out and do things that scare you.
No.
Yes. Go out and like experience fear.
Don't love that.
I know. Because like fear keeps us safe.
Right.
It's a natural biological condition that all of us experience. And it's also a complex emotion. But it can also be positive and healthy while sometimes also having negative consequences. So really, each of us is on our own unique journey. I felt very woo-woo saying that.
It was a little woo.
It's on our own unique journey of personal growth, but like it is a continuous process that it spans our entire life.
Mhm.
And as children, we do things that are risky a lot because we
Fair,
don't have
yeah.
enough life experience to tell us, hey, you should be scared of this.
Yeah.
So we learn a lot when we're young because our biggest growth comes from overcoming problems in situations that challenge us, that we're scared of, that we're fearful of.
Mhm.
So when we let fear or anxiety, especially as we become adults, become a blockage, we avoid those new experiences and uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah. Fair.
And then what it leads to is we start to feel unfulfilled because we're not living an authentic life.
What?
Instead of moving forward, we tend to stay safe and in a place that we've like long outgrown because we haven't challenged ourselves or became scared, and that's okay. We have to do those things.
I don't understand. No.
Says the woman, mind you, I would like to point out, says the woman who's like, no, it's okay. You can just stay in your little, who's moved like down the eastern seaboard, not knowing anybody but us, who has picked up rock climbing, who like does really like adventurous things actually. And she's like, no, you don't have to do things that challenge you or push you outside of your comfort zone. Who's done an Outward Bound course as an adult, which
is terrifying.
Is terrifying because in Outward Bound, we do all of these things. Like it's much easier to take an Outward Bound course as a kid. As a teenager.
When you're fearless.
Yeah, because you're fearless. You're like, oh, cool. Yeah, you want me to jump in this freezing cold water? Awesome. Like, you want me to hike up this mountain that looks death-defying? Sure, why not?
With no regard for how much the insurance costs are going to be if you break something.
Yeah. But yet Amber has done it, and she's over here being like, well, it's okay. She's lying to all of you. She is way more outgoing and adventurous and like out there for like overcoming problems and situations and like very challenging. Don't let her lie to you. She doesn't stay in her comfort zone at all.
I mean, not in all areas of my comfort zone. Okay, so how many times have you experienced or heard stories like this? Imagine you're currently in an unfulfilling role. How many of us are there? You know that you need to make a career change, but the thought of failing is keeping you from making that decision. Like, fair. Totally understand that. So you stay where you are for another year or 2 or 3 or 10, instead of advancing in your career, developing new skills, and being in a role that actually aligns with your true potential and what you want. You just choose to be safe instead. Or feel safe.
Yeah, I think you choose to feel safe. And it's really interesting as you were like saying that. I'm like, I know so many older folks who they say like, okay, what's the key to longevity? They're like, well, you have to learn new things.
Yeah.
Because generally learning new things is fearful and challenging.
Yeah. It's a little scary.
Yeah.
Because that fear of failure, right, is also tied with, fear of not being good enough, of not succeeding at what this new thing is that you're trying. And this is another common obstacle in your professional growth that manifests itself as imposter syndrome. I feel like this is a big
It is a big
thing right now.
Yeah, imposter syndrome, definitely. And I feel like we haven't talked about it a lot on the podcast.
I feel it too deeply. It's too close to home.
I feel it too deeply. Yeah, I think so many of us do feel the imposter syndrome, and it is that fear of failure or that you haven't earned your spot.
Yep. But
you have. It's okay. You're not an imposter. Your life experience has led you where you're supposed to be.
True story.
It's true story. And yeah, you're gonna have to jump sometimes. Like you're gonna have to come off the wall and like take a fall and potentially, taking on a new like professional. that's not life-threatening.
No.
And I think people like get in their own heads and it's that anxiety. I'm like, no, it's okay. This isn't going to end your life.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah. And I mean, if you are constantly avoiding opportunities for emotional growth, you could find yourself unable to deal with challenging situations in your personal and professional life. You know, a lack of resilience, for example, will make you perceive challenges at work as threats instead of opportunities. This affects your job performance and your ability to adapt to new environments.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
It is.
Gotta be adaptable.
We do have to be adaptable and resilient. And, you know, we talk a lot about resiliency in, I think, our professional lives outside of the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so it's definitely a big factor.
Mm-hmm.
So we've laid out a lot of things that most of us probably already know. And we're just sitting here listening to the podcast being like, oh, they got into my head. They knew I have been thinking about this.
Again.
Yeah, again.
Always.
Okay, so as always, we're not going to just leave you in the lurch and be like, hey, here's this monumentous problem. Good luck, Godspeed. No, we're going to give you some things to help you.
Yeah.
And one of those ways is using your fitness as a way to build resilience and mental fortitude, which I think is important because it's a really easy way in our everyday lives to start to work on this, where we don't have to upend our whole career and like do that. It's just a really easy, fun way where we can start to build it in, and then who knows what you might be capable of.
Right? Okay, so how do we do this with fitness?
Okay, so one of the things is run fast. Sprinting. So it's really easy for us to get comfortable running at the same distance, time, route, or using like the same machines.
Okay.
So don't be afraid to run faster. You might not be able to keep the same pace for very long right away, but over time you'll start to increase your stamina and burn more calories and push yourself. Running fast is uncomfortable.
Yeah, especially if you're not athletically inclined and tend to trip over flat surfaces.
Yeah, but
Pretty scary.
Just be like, okay, I'm going to run from, you might be out for a jog and you're like, all right, I'm going to sprint from this mailbox to that mailbox. Just this distance. Push yourself, challenge yourself in that moment. Try and really like haul ass. One, because it's going to build your confidence and resiliency and knowing like, hey, if I have to run fast because I'm in a life-threatening environment, I can, right? Like you've done it, you've practiced it. So it's a really easy way to start to build that confidence and the resilience. Even if you just want to put it in that frame of mind of like, I'm outrunning the zombie.
Fair.
Like, if that's what gets you going, go.
There is an app for that.
There is,
We'll put that in
it's Run Zombie Run.
the upcoming app episode.
Yeah. Which is a fun way that they capitalized on it. Because like when you hear that auditory, you're like, oh shit, heart rate starts to go up. Like, it is cool.
Amygdala kicks in and takes over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Blood goes to the legs.
So another way to use your fitness to help overcome fear is to lift heavy. And this is something we have been talking about. Not only is strength training incredibly important for longevity and your health, as we talked about in a past episode, and maintaining muscle mass, it also teaches us that our bodies are more capable than we frequently believe. It forces us to recognize our limits and quite often surpass them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many of us have been like, oh, I can't lift that much. And then you get under a barbell or you pick up a dumbbell and you're like, oh, I'm stronger than I think I am. Yeah.
For sure. Especially if you're coming back into lifting or strength training or working out, and you're like, oh, I've lost all of my muscle mass. Like, you probably haven't.
Yeah, you have.
You probably retained more than you think you have. I mean, don't dive right into like the 100-pound dumbbells, but like, reach for maybe the 15 instead of the 10.
Yeah.
The 20 instead of the 15. Like, give yourself a little extra.
Yeah, exactly.
Try it.
I mean, this is try new things. It's not easy to break out of our comfort zones, but you can avoid getting yourself stuck in a rut by trying something new just completely.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of like fitness, that might mean, maybe you're a yoga person. Go try a burn boot camp.
Yeah.
Maybe you're somebody who's really comfortable in your CrossFit gym. That's awesome. Go try yoga.
Yeah.
It's
Y'all
more
need it.
challenging than you think. If you do those things already, like go try rock climbing, go join like a local rec league and play a sport that maybe you last played in high school, like volleyball.
Yeah.
Doing those things and trying those kinds of like new activities, you might find a lot of enjoyment in it.
Mhm.
And it's just like fun to be a kid. Like we went and played pickleball. I've never played pickleball in my life. I think I played tennis, air quotes, like in high school as like fun and like my, team and individual
badminton.
sports class. Yeah, badminton. And it was lots of fun. And I worked up a sweat and it was cool just to like learn new skills.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
I'm also very sore. Don't be fooled. Yes, it's for the 55 and up crowd, but man, you can get a great workout playing pickleball.
All right. There you go, folks. There's your new sport. So you can also, I like how you titled this one, dive in. Definitely don't overlook the benefits of swimming for exercise. I feel like I recommend this to my students all the time as they get ready for their Outward Bound course. Swimming is fantastic exercise. Even if you've never swam before, there are plenty of opportunities to learn at any age. Like your local Y probably has swimming lessons for all ages at a reasonable cost. It's a great low-impact aerobic workout with plenty of strokes you can try to suit your personal style.
Yeah. I think it's something that not many of us, those who swim regularly, know how good of a workout it is.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that the fear and the anxiety about being seen in a swimsuit can help you overcome that. Now you're in the pool. Trust me, I was a lifeguard. I can tell you, we don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody's looking at you. If you can do CrossFit, you can go swim. Yeah. Because you think everybody's looking and counting your reps in the gym. Nobody's looking at you. They're all dying.
Yeah.
But it's the same in the pool. Like nobody's looking at you. They're just trying to breathe.
Yeah. They're over drowning in their lane.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Like they're just like, okay, I'm going to focus. They're just looking at the little blue line on the inside of the lane. Like, let's be serious.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to practice because many of us do have that anxiety around being seen in a swimsuit. And so it gets you over a little bit of fear in that regard, as well as a great workout. And this one's just a little woo-woo. I like it. Be yourself. Don't be afraid to be yourself. Like, show off your quirky side and be comfortable in your own skin. Let others know what makes you you, and you're likely to find others with similar interests and personalities. And so I think fear gets in the way of letting us be who we want to be, especially out in social circles and in public. And if you can do this, then it'll help you start to overcome some of that. It's definitely not easy to always be yourself. Yeah. And for some of our listeners, we understand that some social settings, you may be really afraid for your personal safety.
Yes. That is yes.
And we get that. Fear. That's a legitimate fear, talking about a fear episode. But try and find places where you can be yourself, and it'll help you overcome that. And just, I think you'll be overall happier.
Yeah. And to our younger listeners, I do find that is becoming easier the older I get.
Yeah.
I care less and less about what other people think.
Yeah, I give zero fucks.
My fuck it bucket is running dry.
Yeah, I just don't care. Like, this is me. If you don't like me, like, I'm not forcing you to be here. Yeah. And yeah, I think the older you get, it is a learned thing for some of you younger folks. It's easy for us to be on the other side and be like, be yourself. But it's hard. It's hard. It can be really hard. But it is fun to get to be yourself and be quirky and be into the things. Like, I'm 37 and I like to play with Legos. I don't care.
I mean, Legos are great.
Also, Legos are marketing to people my age because they know they really got something with us.
I mean, yeah, it's such a lovely activity.
Yeah.
Like
Problem solving.
dexterity.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's great.
Mhm.
But yeah, ask me about that like 20 years ago. I would never have admitted to like a bunch of people like, oh yeah, one of my favorite hobbies is to play Legos by myself, sitting at my kitchen table.
I mean, do what you got to do. I like to zone out watching trashy TV and playing silly games.
Yeah.
Like mindless games on my tablet. Sending my little airplanes off into the world.
Go little airplane, fly. Well, I think it's not easy to overcome fear, and it's not easy to be fearless, but we can practice it. And I think we should practice it, and using our fitness is a good way to do it without, upending our whole world.
Yeah, you don't need to do that.
Yeah. You know,
Unless your world is not going well. And then maybe you do.
and maybe you do. So there we go.
But maybe start small.
Maybe start small. Maybe start by trying to, do a rope climb at your CrossFit gym.
And remember, whether you are lifting weights or lifting each other up, let's keep breaking barriers, building strength, and embracing our rainbow of resilience. Until next time, bitches and bears, stay fierce and stay fabulous.